My name is Isabel. Your name?
Craig Smith.
Okay. When did this building start? I mean, who built it?
Okay. 1977, a group of individuals came together in the province under the direction of Dr. W.P. Oliver.
Okay.
They formed the Society for the Preservation and Protection of Black History and Culture in Nova Scotia.
Okay.
That society was the brainchild for the Black Cultural Centre. From 1977 up to 1982 and into 83, they fundraised. They found the money, provincial and federally, to build this building. The building actually opened in September of 1983.
How much did it cost?
That I don't know. Russell will know the exact amount. I don't know.
Okay. First off, how is the connection, the economic situation here?
If you're looking from a black narrative, the
Yes.
economic sector, non-existent to a degree. I mean, you have one or two, a few handful of black businesses, but for the most part, still high unemployment rates, high dropout rates in schools, overrepresentation of black young males incarcerated or in jail. So economically, we're still a long ways to go.
Why do you think so?
Well, I think for a number of reasons. I mean, when we first came to this province, we came to the province as black loyalists or as black refugees, fleeing slavery and persecution in the U.S. And on the ears and the heels of promises that the British government made to us in coming, and then didn't live up to. So it wasn't one of those situations where we were welcomed with open arms and we were given the opportunities to prosper like everybody else. We came and we're still given second-class citizenship. So you think back to 1784 when they had the first race riot in Canada in Birchtown. Why? Because the business owners there knew that instead of hiring white people and having to pay them high wages, they could hire the blacks and pay them whatever they wanted to. And so, therefore, those that didn't get jobs were upset and went and burnt and destroyed homes throughout Birchtown. And so, that second-class citizenship that we were relegated to has lived on through succeeding generations. It's never been about let's make you equal. It's been about let's do what we can do. You bring that up to more present day when you had, for instance, the community of Halifax that was relocated so that Halifax could build its second bridge and could expand the container terminal, as opposed to trying to do better for the people, as what the thought was at that time. Those folks that they moved out of Halifax, they moved into public housing and put them on social assistance. In some cases, unfortunately, 3 and 4 generations later, that still exists because of that fact. As opposed to providing that community with the running water and the electricity and all the other amenities that everybody else had in this city, and allow them to still be a thriving community.
How many businesses does African American, the black community owns?
Well, you have a number of different business owners that are here within the province that have their own businesses, but nothing that would be on the same level as white ownership here within
That's
the province.
incredible.
Think about it. You only have somewhere between 21 and 24,000 black people here in the province, right? So out of a province of about 1 million people. So when you consider how our small numbers, then the reality is as well, right? That we're 2% of the population here within the province. But if you consider the all the other pieces that I talked about, and not being economically sound, not having the job opportunities, having the high unemployment, the high dropout rate, it all lends itself to that's not conducive to starting your own business and to be able to take your business, take a business idea and thrive with it. And then all the other hoops that you have to jump through to try to make it happen.
Okay, so who is in control? The British system or the hegemons? Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, we started out as part of the British government, and now we have our own constitution, the Canadian government. But it's still the government that's in control of the province itself, whether it be provincially or federally. And so it's still a matter of playing within the rules of what is the setting government.
I find it incredible that for a small island called the United Kingdom and Africa, which is right next door, a huge continent, why does the British have such a economic hold over Africans?
Well, that one, that's a big question. I mean, if you look at here in Nova Scotia, I don't think that we necessarily see ourselves as Britons. We see ourselves as Canadians. Yes, we still have the Queen as a figurehead. But
Okay.
we see ourselves very much as Canadians.
Oh, right.
Okay. But within that Canadian context, unfortunately, we still see ourselves as second-class citizens to a large degree when it comes to being part of the larger collective, right? And that goes whether or not it's us trying to get our history into the classroom so that kids in school across this country are learning about us and know who we are, so that you educate by providing them with a history of what their forefathers did in this province, and to assist in this country, whether it be fighting in the First World War with the Number 2 Construction Battalion or in the Second World War, and just being part of the fabric of what it is to be Canadian, to just being accepted.
Okay.
And it's still a long ways from being able to go into a classroom and when you're hearing about Canadian history, hearing about our history.
Okay. What do you think about the prospect of having more Africans here in Nova Scotia if the number is so small to to boost you up?
But the reality is that and this is not me talking. This is provincial tourism talking as well, and immigration. The reality is that people come here. Stay for a few years, usually to get, because usually there's a fixed time that they have to be here. So they come to Nova Scotia, they stay here in Nova Scotia, but then they migrate to Montreal and Toronto or to Vancouver where there is a larger populace. And in some cases, especially when they're immigrants, a larger populace of folks that look like them, right? So if you're talking about, folks that have come from Jamaica, well, then they will usually go to Toronto because there's a larger Jamaican community in Toronto. Right? If you're coming from Haiti, you're going to go to Montreal because there's a larger Haitian community, and it's French-speaking as well, but a larger Haitian community there. So what we find is that people come here, kind of get their feet wet and get themselves on some solid footing, but then they look to go where there are more folks that are like them.
Where it's more exciting, right?
More exciting is more opportunities as well.
Oh, okay,
right?
Okay. All right. Well, is it boring to live here?
I mean, as somebody who's lived here all my life, I don't think so. But if you've come from a larger place, then you may find it a little bit slower, shall we say?
Okay. I was asking the beautiful ladies downstairs, why does it? I was watching some documentaries and about Islam and transatlantic. Trans-Saharan slave trade, where the Arabs and Islam and Muhammad in particular was involved in. So I just want to ask you, why do you think Africans are so weak when it comes to protection and security for themselves?
But if we're looking at it in a historical context, and we're looking back at this transatlantic slave trade, I think that some of the African nations that would have been involved in it. If you were a warring faction, and you could get rid of the group that you were warring with by, I guess I should preface that by saying I don't necessarily believe that those that were selling off or passing off other tribes to be enslaved really recognized what the transatlantic or the North American idea of slavery was, because if we look at things in ancient times, slavery was not that as brutal as you would have found it in the North American context. I mean, we look at history and we see where there are times when slaves were set free, slaves were indentured, slaves could have their own families, slaves, there were a lot of times in other cultures where slavery was not the brutality that you saw within the context of the transatlantic slave trade. And so therefore I don't necessarily know for a fact that they knew the atrocities that awaited those fellow Africans that they sold into slavery or helped put into slavery. I think in some cases it could have been as well the threat that if I'm giving up you, I'm protecting myself.
Yes.
So I think that was probably something that played into it as well. But nonetheless, all these centuries later, we still have the fact that yes, there were Africans that gave up other Africans to be put in slavery.
So do you keep in touch with something like Liberian politics?
No, I don't. I don't. I'm not into the whole into global politics as much as I should be. I'm not trying to keep a handle on what's happening in North America, especially south of the border.
Okay. What is your relationship with European Nova Scotians in particular?
Well, I mean, for the most part, I mean, given the fact that the numbers that we have here in the province, you deal with white folks every day.
Okay.
That's just a reality, right?
Right.
Whether it's school, whether it's work, in most cases you're outnumbered at most of the things that you're at. When it comes to the what the numbers are. So, you interact with white folks every day of your life.
Okay. And do you have any political tensions, or are you able to live together
Well,
well?
I mean, for the most part, for me, I've never had, I'm a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Canada's National Police Force.
Okay.
There are only about 300 of us out of 19,000 across the country. It was an organization that didn't even allow black members to join until 1967.
Now, why? Just tell me why this allowance. What's going on?
Well, the force started in 1873, and there wasn't. It was just an unwritten rule that blacks weren't allowed to join. No people of color were allowed to join. So, and again, that was the same for the British Navy. That was the same for the British Army. There were all those things that were all white at those times. So, by the 60s, of course, with the American Civil Rights Movement and with the things that we were doing civil rights-wise here in Canada, it started to push the envelope and it started to open the doors for some folks. And so that's where we started to make some of the headway of getting people into some of the national organizations and even local organizations.
Okay, so what was the aim of bringing on Africans onto, into colonization? What was the main
Scotia
reason?
Here, it was strictly about free labor. I mean, when they brought the loyalists came here and when the refugees came here, it wasn't about, okay, we're going to give you equal citizenship the same as everybody else. It was about having folks here, and actually, even if we go before then, there were slaves bought and sold here in Nova Scotia. So slavery was practiced here in this province, right? And so that in and of itself showed that there was obviously a second class citizenship that was established from the very beginning of us being here.
What is the beginning of Nova Scotia, and why the name? Is it New Scotland?
I believe so.
Okay, so is it Scottish that came here, or the British Empire?
Well, the French occupied Nova Scotia as well.
Interesting.
Yes.
So how did it come across? I mean, who started the whole idea to come here? Because this place is pretty cold, So what?
In the winter.
Okay.
So if you think about it, you had Columbus and folks that are going to the U.S. and you had Champlain and those guys that were traveling and colonizing and seeking out what they called new lands, even though the First Nations people were already here and well inhabited. But you had people that were leaving Europe to come and claim new lands for their king and country. And so Nova Scotia or Canada was no different when it came to doing those kind of things, of them seeing this is new fertile land and someplace that they could claim for their own. And so there were fights between the British and the French for Nova Scotia here. And of course the British were the ones that won. And so it became part of the British Empire.
Interesting. Instead of the French, huh?
Yes.
What about the Dutch? Were they ever here?
Now that I don't know. Probably, yeah. I don't, not in the context of having claimed the land, right?
All right. So they are the
There are
ones.
Dutch settlements. There were Dutch settlements here.
Interesting. And Germans.
There's a church on Brunswick Street in Halifax. That's on the corner of Brunswick and Gary Street in Halifax, which is called the Dutch Church. And there's a graveyard right beside it. It's a tiny little church. And yes, and when they had the G7 here in 94, 95, Helmut Kohl, who was the Chancellor of Germany at that time, visited the Dutch church.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's obviously of significance.
So what about Germans? Are they here?
Certainly. Lunenburg, which is on the South Shore. It was founded by Germans.
So basically, this whole expansionism or imperialism is all over the earth.
Oh, no question.
Oh, goodness. No wonder we can figure it out. Because we are just looking at Western Europe, and it's pretty small. Just pretty small place. So is it guns that made them succeed? I mean, I can't figure it out.
Well, I think there's a whole bunch of things. I mean, they talk about that some of the early British Navy that was here fighting, in particular trying to wipe out the First Nations community, that they at one point traded them and gave them blankets that were infected with smallpox to try to kill them off. So it was a matter of, you're talking about biological warfare there. But there were a lot of different ways in which they did what they did, right, to try to take over and to try to wipe out, or at least to downsize any First Nations communities that were here that would cause any uprisings against them trying to take over the land.
So was it about Christianity? Who gave them that thinking? Okay, to go steal somebody's land and kill off its people and take over.
I don't know. I think it's it's one of those paternalistic ideas and one of those hierarchical ideas that we are better, and so therefore we have the right to take and claim whatever we want, and as long as we can overpower you or kill you off, then we can claim it without any problem.
And they did that for a very long time.
Very much so.
Okay, and the Islamists, the Arabs also did that for 1,300 years or so. All right, so what about this nice Mi'kmaq people? Who are they?
The Mi'kmaq people are the first peoples here in Nova Scotia. They're the First Nations people.
Okay, what is the relationship between African Nova Scotians
well,
and them?
for those of us that came up as Black loyalists in particular, it was the Mi'kmaq that helped them survive the winters. They helped them to build lean-tos and to do the other things.
You got to be kidding.
No, it was the First Nations community. And if you look at a lot of the Black community here in this province, in some of the outlying communities, in a lot of cases there were intermarriages and intermingling. My great-great-grandmother was Mi'kmaq. So there are communities across this province where Black and Mi'kmaq were together. If you go to Birchtown, they talk about the lean-tos that they dug out of the ground with a little bit of a roof over top of them to keep warm those first winters they got there. It was the Mi'kmaq that taught them how to do that. Knowing what medicinal herbs and things that you could pick here in the province. It was the Mi'kmaq that helped with a lot of that as well. And so there was a lot of interconnectedness between the two communities.
Can you name some of the towns that they live in?
Well, if you look down in Guysborough, down in Bear River, outside of Digby, but Digby, you also have Digby and Weymouth. Weymouth is a Black community as well. Even when when I started my RCMP career, I was in Yarmouth. There was a community called Quinnen, which was a Mi'kmaq community once upon a time. If you look all over, in Truro, there's Bible Hill. In Cape Breton, you have Sydney, but then you also have Eskasoni and Membertou. Membertou's right in the heart of Sydney. So you have places where there was ample opportunity for the communities to come together.
I have one question I've always wanted to ask. It looks as if their attitude towards occupation, and South Africans are a little bit different. What do you think?
Mi'kmaq?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Their attitude towards
occupation, meaning colonization and all that.
Well, I mean, ultimately, their thinking towards it was, for the most part, was that they didn't want it. They didn't want somebody coming in. I mean, they were a traditional people that moved towards the water in the summer to be able to fish, and then moved away from the water in the wintertime, or that moved around as they needed to with regard to the herding of animals and where things migrated.
Nomadic.
Exactly. And so therefore that was their life. Then you had a group that came here. When you look at the British and you look at the French that came here, they said, no, we want you all in one place. And so they take away that whole idea of how they were how they lived, and relegated them to, nope, you can no longer be nomadic. We need you in one spot only, and we need one leader that speaks for all of you, and change their whole existence. And then or wouldn't hire them for any jobs, wouldn't give them positions, and so therefore they set them up for failure and for extinction if they could have it that way.
What is their economic situation like?
First Nations?
Yeah.
It depends. If you look at in this province here, if you look at Membertou, which is in Sydney, and you look at Millbrook, which is in economic fortitude and to be able to create some businesses themselves on the land that they have, and then rent that out to other businesses to come and to utilize. But you still have some communities that are that aren't prospering at all, that are involved in the fisheries to a degree, but still don't have the opportunity for the economic prosperity that some of a few of the others have.
What do you think is their future?
Well, I mean, my hope is that, like us, with succeeding generations, you have more young people that go to seek higher education, that go to look at what they can do business-wise, and then you also have those that are doing well that come back and give to the community or help, with the community.
Okay. Well, is there any inventions here? Like technology, something that will keep you guys up?
I don't. That I don't know, but I do know that there's the opportunity, I think, for things like that to happen. And there have been some startup software companies that have been here, but I don't know how much we play into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, of course, here being president of the Cultural Center, one of the things that we look at is our economics is through tourism.
Okay.
So it's about cultural tourism and getting the word out to the larger society that we're even here.
Okay.
When we still travel through the U.S. and you say, yes, there's black people in Nova Scotia and they're descendants of you who came up.
Yes.
You still get, wow, we had no idea.
Yes.
In 2018, we still get that.
Right.
So to get the word out there that we're here, that we are descendants of them, and that you really can't tell the entire story of black people in America unless you include the narrative here in Nova Scotia and other places in Canada, because we also settled in other places in Canada as well. Some of the first inhabitants of BC came from San Francisco, and there were 35 blacks that came on the ship the Commodore. Some of the first inhabitants to the prairies were blacks that came up from Oklahoma, and then you have the groups that came to Ontario and Quebec via the Underground Railroad. And so we've touched all those provinces that border the U.S., but in a lot of cases our history is lost. They're lost, and they're maybe a one or two lines in a book as opposed to being part of the collective Canadian narrative when you're telling the story of who we are.
Okay.
So that's why we have to keep pushing to get it.
2 more questions.
Okay.
Why don't you guys trade across the Atlantic with West Africans?
Why do we or don't we?
Why don't you do that?
That's a federal government question. I would hope that our government looks to trade wherever it is that we can, that we can do the best, and that we can help other countries as well, but also help ourselves.
Do you know how much you guys will make if you trade with West Africans? Have you thought about it?
No, I haven't. 'Cause
Please.
I really haven't studied the Canadian trade to know, other than hearing about the trade wars with the U.S., I haven't really looked at how much we trade or don't trade with the...
What I mean is black on black.
Yep.
That relationship must come.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And last one.
Yep.
I was very surprised that at the border we didn't see any Nova Scotian Africans booklet or something,
material.
information.
Yeah.
Why?
We're working towards that right now.
Okay.
We're working to get a kiosk in there.
Okay.
In all of the entry points to the province that will talk about the black experience here in the province, and
Okay.
will point you to what the organizations are that you can come visit while you're here.
Okay.
But I would agree, for a long time we're like the best kept secret. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that we're here, or even. And the funny part is that there are millions, if not billions, of dollars that people spend on vacations and if they knew a little bit more about our experience
would
and
come
who we
running.
are, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And so that's what we're hoping to do, because unfortunately the governments haven't thought of that, so we have to do it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay.
You're welcome. I hope it was good.